Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of People Path to Progress 2030. And today's webinar is going to be on the shared value of organizational culture, its benchmarking, and its importance. I am Alishba, Tayyab, the founder and CEO of Green HRS, and the company which is actually working on implementing sustainable HR practices in Pakistan. And today we have two very seasoned HR professionals with us, David Brauer and Shahrukh Mirza. So, about David, he is a global HR professional with a doctorate in business administration from Durham University. He has also developed a software which is used for benchmarking organizational culture while using the Big Nine cultural criteria. And he's also the director of sales at the Institute of West Virginia University. And now the second guest, Shahrukh Mirza, he's a Korn Ferry Hayes certified HR professional with 30 years of diverse experience in the local and international market in both UAE and Pakistan and in the US as well. And he's currently leading the strategy and consulting business as a regional head of HR consultancy at People Perfect Worldwide. So welcome to both David and Shahrukh. Now we're going to move towards our topic today.
Thank you very much. This is exciting stuff, and indeed, culture is extremely important. You know, lots of times people are talking about culture. They're talking about all kinds of different things, and most people aren't necessarily on the same page when they're talking about what culture is. And so, Shine and Newdall came up with a definition that says culture is defined as a system of shared values and beliefs interacting for a company's goals, working toward a common goal. And so that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about culture. And these Big Nine cultural values that were developed by the Shine brothers at MIT really helped to put this all together. So, developing a strategy where you can quantify culture and then use culture as to your strategic advantage really can be one of the biggest tools in your arsenal to help an organization succeed and actually to help HR contribute to the bottom line directly. The next part, do you want me to go into a presentation or would you like to?
Yes, absolutely. Just move forward with the presentation. We'd love to hear more about it.
Absolutely. Let me just share my screen here. Thank you. So the great management guru, Peter Drucker, was an American management guru, and he said that which cannot be measured cannot be managed. And if you can't manage it, you can't maximize your profits on it. You can't make decisions with it. It can't be part of your strategy. And this is really why culture needs a new measuring stick, why you need to be able to quantify your culture, why you need to be able to know what your culture is within every part of your organization, to be able to use it as a tool for your success. So lots of times when people come into an organization, they may be a perfect fit. They hit all the KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities they needed to be successful for the job. And you vetted them, and maybe even they did a nice job going out to dinner and connecting with people, and they seem like they'd be a good fit for the job, only a few months later to realize that, they really aren't a good fit for the team. They're not really working well, and this causes a problem, an expensive problem for the organization and for the individual themselves, where the individual finds themselves in a position of having to find a new job, and the company really finds a big hole in the spot that they were trying to fill, and they have lost production, silent quit, and while the person's looking for a new job and you're looking for someone to fill the position that you needed. And so this can be very costly for an organization. In the world today, the global turnover and disengagement crisis costs $7 trillion, according to SHRM. And 50 to 60% of employee turnover is due to poor cultural fit. Good news is culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so culture is the most important thing that you can focus on to help make your organization successful. And if you can quantify your culture, you can diagnose and prescribe it and reverse the poor effects of cultural fit. So even the most high performing individuals, people, organizations are always looking to improve themselves. You know, Bolt was the fastest runner in the world and still continually practiced to get faster. He wasn't practicing to become the best, he already was. He was practicing to be better than he already was. So no matter what position an organization is in, whether they're already a high performing organization or they're not quite so high performing, they can use culture as a strategy to help them improve their performance across the board by reducing turnover, increasing engagement, and increasing performance, as we'll see. I just mentioned that this is the common definition for culture so that everybody's on the same page when we know what we're talking about with regards to culture. Just a system of shared values and beliefs working toward a common goal. All right, so here's the big nine. This is the exciting stuff because until about 6 years ago, not everybody was talking about the same thing with regards to the culture. And organizations would say, "Oh, here's our mission and here's our culture on the wall." And I bet that if you went around to most of those organizations and asked the line workers or the rank and file workers of the organization what the culture of the organization was, you wouldn't get the same answer twice, right? So it's really important when you're talking about culture that you're using the same measurement, right? And so this measurement allows you not only to measure across the different organizations and see how to compare cultures, but allows you to really focus in on your own internal culture. So we've been using the Big Nine for a number of years now to compare culture within an organization, and we'll see what that looks like. So we use comparative judgment as opposed to the Likert scale because using comparative judgment is approximately 32% more accurate than using the Likert scale alone. So the Likert scale is the 1 to 10, the do you agree, on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you with this? With comparative judgment, you're always comparing one attribute to another. So in this case, performance to customer. So which is more important to the organization, the customer or performance? If you ask them individually, a person on a Likert scale is going to say performance is a 10. It's extremely important. If you ask someone how important is the customer on a scale of 1 to 10, well, without customers, you don't have a business. So that's probably also a 10. But when comparing the two, which one's more important? And this is really where it comes down, right? Where the rubber hits the road. It forces you to make a decision of where your priorities lie. And in that is where you find the common culture to reach those common goals. If you're misaligned here, you start to create friction within the organization, and this is where there's a miscultural fit. So here's a company that we looked at over a period of 2 years. And at the beginning, this company culture on the left, you can see this is using the Big Nine to define what the cultural DNA, if you will, of the organization is. So this is their DNA in 2023. And then this is the shot on 2025 after we had some intervention. So back in 2023, you'll notice that execution was at 11.6% of the magnitude of importance for this organization. And what we found out while we were doing this was that it was this cultural value that was most important when translated to the field salesperson. So for every 1 point increase the field salesperson had in the cultural value of execution translated to a 3.9% increase in sales. Now, this doesn't mean that this would happen within every organization, but this was within this organization. That's what it meant. And that's why it's so important for you to be able to measure this within your organization. So by having this intervention and then hiring more for execution, we only had a moderate increase, but the moderate increase translated into a large change in the sales. And this company was already fairly happy with their performance, and they were still able to increase performance by a little bit and strengthen their culture toward what they wanted it to be a little more. This is looking at the top 10 salespeople and where their cultural values are. So they are in blue, are the top 10 salespeople in this organization. And so you'll see that for these people, there were a couple of outliers here, right? Not surprisingly, the salespeople were highly valued what the customers thought. And that's because these are the people they're interacting with and the people that are really um, being able to put food on their table, right? They're the ones that are making their commission checks. And so they really had a high focus on the customer. And but you will see that they were fairly well lined up, and there's a pretty a common pattern across the culture here. And where they're aligned is is in most of the points. So after you do an organizational culture benchmark, and that's what those pie charts were, that was the DNA. After you do an organizational culture benchmark, you can use the cultural fit in the hiring process for each individual. And what you're seeing here is a screenshot inside of a system that shows two different candidates that all made it through the KSAs and the interviews, right? And so it came down to these two people, and then who seemed until this point to be fairly equally yoked. And what you'll see here is one person had an 85.6 match to the organization's culture, which is fairly high, and one had 28.8. So before they had a problem trying to figure out which one of these two people they were going to pick, because in every other measure they were equal until it came to cultural fit. And so it's an easy decision to see once you start to hire for cultural fit and you have your organizational culture benchmark, then you can start to do things like this. The results for this organization, there was a 47% decrease in turnover due to poor cultural fit. They had an average annual savings over these 3 years of $1.2 million in lost production, cost, hiring, retaining, and they had a 3.9% increase in sales.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, David. Thank you so much for this insight. I think we learned so much out of it, and especially the numbers, I could never expect it. So, but moving to you, Shahrukh, we often see that whenever we are hiring, we are ticking off in the job description, right? So what do you think are other good ways to see to establish if some candidates are the cultural fit for you?
Yes, I think it's a good question, because a lot of times our initial focus is always right from the job ad all the way down to the interviewing phase. It's on objectivity side of the role.
Yeah.
What's required to deliver objectively. But as Dave pointed out, the cultural aspects cannot be underrated either, because they actually have a direct impact on the performance of the employees, as it's one of the big 9 values which were pointed out here. And so that affects obviously the bottom line of a particular function, and it happens to be sales, then obviously it's directly numbers. Therefore, I think as opposed to just bringing people in based on their experience and technical functional competency level, organizations also need to look at the values side, or the cultural fit, if you allow me to say, right at the time of induction, so we can save all that time and effort later.
Exactly, and the financial aspect as well. So moving back to you, David, so how are the cultural value benchmarks set in a company? So I want to add, are we specifically focused on the leadership, or do you think there is a collaborative approach to set that up?
So with this, with the example that I was showing here, that was every single employee within the organization. And then, of course, we quantified the subcultures within the organization as well. So we were able to break out sales, HR, corporate, all of the different divisions within the organization. And that's all set up whenever you're looking at your metadata. And so that way, too, if you're working with a very large organization, this one had offices all over the United States, we were able to see subcultures within some of the cities, let's say Miami versus New York versus Los Angeles. And so when hiring for those offices, it was also important that you're also hiring for the fit within that office, right? So it's important that you're looking at the overall cultural fit. For some smaller organizations that are more regional, obviously their cultures are tighter. And for those ones that have offices all over, maybe the world even, right? Cultures from Dubai to London to New York, Karachi will all be different, right? A little bit different, but you're all working toward the same common goal. So quantifying the whole entire organization and being able to have a holistic view of what the culture is within the organization is really the most valuable. And that's something that you can really rely on to strengthen your strategy and your strategic measures within the organization that other organizations might not be quite as adept at doing. So it really gives you a huge competitive advantage.
That's perfect. So I think moving from David's answer to actually you, now that we are seeing that there are multiple different, every other office has a different culture, and that depends. Like, so we really need a collaborative approach. So you just gave us an insight during the recruitment, right? But let's assume for a second that you do hire someone and that cultural fit is not working. What are the next steps for HR to, turn that around and make it a cultural fit?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of cultural training that's available. It could be managed in-house as well as externally. But I personally feel, based on my experience over the years, that the employees, once they're on board, as you said, they tend to align their values, cultural values, with the organization's cultural values.
Yes.
If that process does not happen, and let's say one performance cycle or the next, inevitably it's going to result again in a gap, performance gap.
Bilkul.
And as HR professionals and HR department, I think it's our mission to actually facilitate the training and development for these individuals, because the company has already invested time and painstaking effort to get the right people on the right job. However, I think to answer your question once again, in a nutshell, is that if all that, however, despite the training and despite all the efforts, if it doesn't work out, chances are that if it impacts performance, the employees, if they're not willing to adapt to the organization culture, would possibly look for other options in their career and move on.
Yes, I think that's also a very important point to understand, that it's not just the company, it's about the employee as well, if they adapt or not. So moving back to you, David. So we were discussing those, values, and there are different, 9 different values. So do you think they can be ranked in terms of their importance, in terms of the organization? Like, what can be the ranking?
So that's what we do when we're doing the organizational culture benchmark, is we're actually doing we're actually ranking it, and we're finding out what the magnitude of priority of each one is within the organization. So every organization has their own cultural DNA, their own cultural makeup, and that is the magnitude of priority of those big 9. And going back to culture fit in the hiring process, when you're looking at an individual and maybe they might be off on one of those values, what you're able to do when you're hiring for cultural fit, or when you're doing this within the organization, is you're able to see where there is alignment on a point and where there's misalignment. And so sometimes it's just a simple miscommunication where the employee didn't know exactly what the goal or what the value of the organization was. This allows full transparency to say, hey, here is what the culture of the organization is. And hey, you're doing a really good job on these 6 or 7 points. We're very well lined up. And just on these other ones where we've got a little bit of misalignment. And so maybe in those cases, you do a little bit of retraining or something like that to help get them on the right page. And often it only takes a little nudge. Whereas in the past, we didn't know where the misalignment was. And then your option is your options become very narrowed and maybe not as positive as you would like, right? So this can take someone, also cultural fit has another really unique thing. So I'm a little bit older, and there used to be this movie called Moneyball, where the person was able to trade players within professional baseball teams in the United States based on data.
Right.
Based on data. Yeah. And so the cultural fit allows you to do that. It allows you to say, hey, maybe this person's not a great fit in London, but maybe they'd be a really good fit culturally on the team in Dubai. Right. And so this allows you to take the strength of your players and move them to where they fit best. And so that's something very exciting that hasn't been able to have been done before. So yes, quantifying and learning the magnitude of priority of each of these for every individual, but for the organization and for all of the subcultures within the organization allows you the real power to be able to maximize the value of this cultural knowledge.
Amazing. That's perfect.
Right.
So I think that was such a wonderful discussion, and I think to conclude it, I would just highlight the importance of having a strategy while you're doing the recruitment process, because oftentimes we forget that it's not just a recruitment process. We are actually adding more people into an organization who are going to be a part of our success in the organization. So in order to do that, we need to understand their shared values.
Yes.
And I think David and Shahrukh both did a wonderful job in highlighting the importance of the topic. But still, I would like to, want to ask both, David first with you. Can you give any suggestion to the top level management of the companies that how can they promote, better culture, or how can they highlight the importance of the shared culture in their organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you haven't quantified your culture yet, I think that's the most important first step is to do an organizational culture benchmark, cultural audit within your organization to really know your culture and know how your culture lays within those big 9 cultural values. And that will allow you to harness the power of culture and then move forward to add things like cultural fit and different things like that in the hiring process that will allow you to grab this.
I'd like to just add that, as you mentioned Peter Drucker earlier, Dave, and Peter Drucker also said that the culture of an organization is the culture of its leader or, CEO, owner.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Amazing.
So the question here is then, let's say, would it be befitting, let's say, to do an exercise in the event to align the CEO or the owner of the organization's culture with the organizational goals and objectives, as that would trickle down into the different departments? As could we actually go from a top-down approach? Is that usually possible?
Yes, you can do that as well. You can weight your organizational culture when you're measuring it, and so different levels of the organization have different weights. You can also do top-down approach where you take just the corporate leadership and quantify their culture and then define the culture this way and hire for those. So it depends where in the life cycle of the organization you are, but it's always most important to measure it. So yes, you can take that approach.
Amazing.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
So I think we can conclude it to the point that culture is not just something written on the wall anymore, right? It's a part of your strategy. It is something that needs to be defined. It needs to be measured, and it is going to help your resources and your company and your business for success. And it's going to help your company boom, right?
Yes.
So I think perfect. Thank you so much to both our guests, Shahrukh and David. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Stay tuned, everyone.
Thank you.